It was supposed to be a classified meeting, invitation only, security cleared, guarded by protocols older than most of the men inside. Deep beneath the Pentagon, behind biometric locks and encrypted networks, the war room was alive with tension. 6 generals, 2 agency liaisons, and a handful of seasoned analysts sat around an oval table, their faces washed in the sterile glow of satellite feeds and shifting topography maps. An op was about to go live. Codenamed Steel Tempest, it had been greenlit barely 72 hours earlier, a high-risk intervention in a contested border zone, where friendly forces had gone dark and insurgent activity was escalating. Every man at that table had an opinion, and none were ready to compromise. Then the door opened. No one had buzzed her in. No one had cleared her on the official roster. And yet there she stood, a woman in civilian clothes, holding a leather folder in one hand, the other resting casually at her side. She didn't flinch. Didn't hesitate. No badge hung around her neck. No uniform identified her rank. Her black blouse was tucked crisply into matching pants, heels silent against the polished floor. Her coat was tailored, practical, and unbranded. A silver pendant was the only thing visible at her throat. One of the generals, Stockton, Air Force, turned toward her, already frowning. "You're not cleared for this room," he barked. "Ma'am, this is a secure." She raised her hand slightly, cutting him off without saying a word. Then, slowly, she opened the folder. Not toward herself, but toward them. Inside, a single piece of paper. Red stamped. Triple classified. Auth code embedded on the header. The silence was instant. General Camden, Army, leaned forward. His face paled. "No way," he muttered. "That designation was decommissioned years ago." The woman finally spoke, her voice quiet but razor-sharp. "Then I guess it's been recommissioned." The folder snapped shut. No one spoke. No one moved. And in that moment, without medals, without orders, without even a chair, she took control of the room. Her name, for most, was unknown. But the file said, Vera Langford, Silent Asset Number 47. Not a name you'd find in any agency database. Not a name you'd find on any payroll or mission debrief. But to those who had operated in the darkest corners of the globe, where no flags flew and no cameras were allowed, her existence was legend. Whispered about. Denied officially. Feared secretly. In 2016, in northern Syria, she'd walked a marine extraction team out of an ambush using nothing but a drone feed and 6 lines of intercepted chatter. In 2019, she stopped a chemical attack in Mali by rerouting satellite intelligence directly into the hands of a Nigerian general who didn't even know she existed. Always behind the curtain. Never seen. Never thanked. Her one rule had always been the same: no rank. No recognition. Just results. Now, in the war room, General Stockton spoke again, softer this time. "You were burned. 3 years ago. CIA walked away. NSC too." She nodded once. "I walked away from them. Not the mission." Another general, Adams, Navy, shifted in his chair, uneasy. "If what you're holding is what I think it is, we're talking preemptive authorization to override standing strategy." "Yes," Vera said. "You're flying into a trap." There was a pause. "Satellite recon shows no hostile movement," said the DIA rep at the far end. Vera stepped forward and tapped a location on the digital map. "That's because they've moved underground. You're looking for heat blooms. They're under limestone. Your algorithm doesn't account for that layer." She spoke with absolute certainty. No hesitation. No notes. "This isn't speculation," she added. "It's confirmation." "And how do you have confirmation?" Stockton snapped. "When half our field teams can't even get signal." Vera reached into her coat pocket and produced a flash drive. She handed it to the nearest analyst. "Decrypt. Play audio file number 3. The room fell still again as the feed was patched into the speakers. Static. Then, "Coordinates verified, movement consistent with tunneling. Primary objective still unaware, stand by for strike." The voice was garbled but unmistakable. Enemy chatter. Verified. Real time. She looked at Stockton. "They know you're coming. They're waiting for you." Now, finally, General Camden spoke again. "Why are you here, Vera?" She didn't blink. "Because the people I trained are already on the ground. Because your plan gets them all killed. And because I gave my word that I'd see them home." Someone scoffed quietly at the end of the table. A younger intelligence officer, maybe late 30s, eager and sharp, but clearly out of his depth. With all due respect, ma'am, we can't rewire a strike op on your say-so. Vera stepped toward him. Not fast. Not threatening. Just steady. I've rewritten 7 strike ops from scratch. From war zones you've never been briefed on. In countries the government says we've never entered. This op is already compromised. You've got less than 3 hours before launch, and your air cover's been triangulated by Russian signals intelligence disguised as local militia traffic. She leaned in. You don't have time to argue with me. And suddenly, no one was. Outside, rain tapped against the reinforced concrete above them. Inside, the war room dimmed as updated feeds came online. And there she stood, Vera Langford, civilian clothes, pendant around her neck, folder in her hand, reconstructing the entire operation in real time. Repositioning drones. Scrambling encrypted radio frequencies. Reassigning insertion points based on silent thermal signatures no one else had noticed. An entire table of generals now listened in silence. She wasn't asking permission. She was giving orders, without ever raising her voice. And when it was done, she turned to leave. Wait, said Camden. What do we call this? She looked back over her shoulder. You call it a rescue. Then she was gone. And no one in that room ever questioned her again. The elevator that carried Vera Langford out of the war room didn't stop at the lobby. It kept descending, 3 floors below classified. Beyond biometric scans, beneath levels even generals didn't know existed. A retinal scanner confirmed her identity. The steel doors slid open to reveal a hallway lit with soft red emergency lights, not because there was a threat, but because this level always looked like this, controlled, suffocating, silent. She walked alone. Down here, no one asked questions. Down here, you either knew why she was coming, or you weren't allowed to be present when she arrived. At the end of the corridor, behind a vault-style door labeled only Zeta 12, a figure waited. He was already standing when she entered. Mid-50s, pale blue shirt with rolled sleeves, the insignia on his lapel deliberately non-military. His glasses reflected the light of a wall-sized monitor behind him, displaying real-time operations grids. Vera, he said, tone flat. You weren't supposed to be back. She dropped the leather folder on the table between them. I wasn't supposed to have to come back. You invoked the Alpha classification, he said quietly. That gets attention. It was the only way to stop a massacre. The man, Langston Price, Deputy Director of Strategic Operations, tilted his head. Do you know how many alarms that triggered across the system? NSA, DIA, Northern Command? Even Space Force chimed in. They thought we were backfilling a ghost unit. Let them think that, she replied. But you and I both know who's actually still breathing. He stared at her for a moment longer, then tapped a button on the table. A hidden drawer slid open. Inside, a small black device the size of a cigarette case. She took it without hesitation, tucked it into her coat. Price didn't stop her. He just asked one question. How bad is it? Vera looked up. Worse than Blackstone. Worse than Langley 7. There's internal bleed. Inside the op? No. Inside the system. He frowned. Compromised data? She shook her head. Compromised people. She wasn't just talking about the failed op she'd intercepted upstairs. She was talking about something deeper. A pattern. One she'd been tracking quietly for over a year. Discrete intelligence manipulations. Tiny shifts in source priorities. Compromised signals being passed off as verified. Each one small enough to seem like a mistake, until you connected the dots. The last time she'd seen this kind of pattern? It had led to a team of Tier 1 operators being led into a fake hostage situation in Jordan. Only one of them had walked out alive. She had been the one to pull him out. And the one to hold his hand when he died 3 days later, whispering a call sign into her ear she would never forget. I need full operational access, she said now. No oversight. No filters. I need to vet our own intelligence structure from the ground up. Price hesitated. That's beyond protocol. I'm not asking, she said. And the look in her eyes said everything. She wasn't here to ask. She was here to clean house. Price rubbed his temple. You already restructured a Tier 1 op live in the war room. You do realize how many careers that just ended? I'm not interested in careers, she replied. Only casualties. He nodded slowly, then reached into a drawer and handed her a second device. This one wasn't encrypted. It was a simple phone. Burner, he said. Active for 48 hours. Use it to reach 3 people. No digital trail. After that, it melts itself. She took it. Who else knows? She asked. About the internal breach? He nodded. 2 agency heads. One flagged it as a glitch. The other flagged me. Which one's still alive? Price blinked. Excuse me? Which one hasn't been car-bombed in Istanbul or had a boating accident in Maine? A beat of silence. Then he answered quietly. The glitch guy. She smiled without humor. Then he's either a fool or a collaborator. Vera stepped out into the parking structure beneath the Pentagon at 2:17 a.m. Her car wasn't parked there. She didn't use cars. Instead, she walked across the underground access bridge to a second lot under Arlington Cemetery. There, in a corner no camera covered, sat a matte black motorcycle under a tarp. The moment she touched it, the ignition activated. Retina scan. Thumbprint. Biopulse check. The machine came to life without a sound. Within minutes, she was flying through DC's silent streets, the wind pulling at her coat as she moved through the night like a shadow without a home. The first person she needed to see wasn't in any agency database. He lived off-grid, in a cabin near the Shenandoah Ridge, pretending to be a writer of wilderness poetry. In truth, Callum Briggs was a former Sigen architect, one of the best digital ghosts ever trained by the CIA. 10 years ago, he'd staged his own death after refusing to encrypt a backdoor into a global surveillance node. Vera had helped him disappear. Now, she needed him to come back. At 4:12 a.m., she arrived at his door. He opened it before she knocked. I've been expecting you, he said, eyes haunted but focused. She stepped inside. Show me everything. For the next 3 hours they dug. Through code logs. Signal intercepts. Old metadata scrubbed from cloud mirrors and forgotten storage caches. What they found confirmed what Vera feared. Not only had 3 Tier 1 ops been sabotaged from inside, but the leaks were intentional, redirected through shell accounts that all pointed to the same anomaly. A single user ID embedded inside an old NSA test server, activated once every 19 days, always from different locations. It wasn't a hacker. It was a ghost. And someone inside the intelligence community had been helping them stay hidden. At dawn, Briggs leaned back from the terminal, rubbing his eyes. You realize what this means, right? Vera stood silently at the window, watching the sun cut through the fog rising off the treetops. Yes, she said. We're not dealing with bad intel. She turned. We're dealing with a counter-operation. As Vera emerged from the rising morning light in the east, she was no longer the former agent, but an active threat hunter. She was tracking a threat from within her own people. And this was more dangerous than foreign-trained terrorists. Because this was walking the corridors of Washington. Callum Briggs was still in front of the screen. His hands couldn't leave the keyboard. The last 4 access points. One is Frankfurt. The other is Manama. But the third... He paused. His eyes widened. Vera, the third is Kansas. He turned to her. There's no NSA distribution center in Kansas. No, Vera said. But there is an old data recovery lab. It was shut down in 2009. Codename, Latchkey. Callum swallowed. Latchkey? Was that still on? Vera closed her eyes and took a deep breath. If this attack came from within, it could have been proxied through that center. And we still think it's inside the Pentagon. He didn't fly to Kansas the next day. He couldn't. Because if he bought a ticket through the system, something would have set off an alarm. Instead, he boarded the last car of a train with his fake ID. He had only a small bag with him, containing not documents, but plans. His FN-57 pistol, with a silencer, was hidden downstairs. And a digital ID cloner in his side pocket. Lanford had fought to protect the state in the past. But this journey was a battle to purge the parasites within the state. When the train arrived at a small station at 5:48 a.m., it felt abandoned. The buildings were rusty. The surroundings were quiet. But something was still working here. He could feel it. The Latchkey complex, once connected to the NSA, was hidden beneath a flat concrete slab. Vera pulled out the old authorization card she'd carried in her bag, now with a cloned RFID tag. The door opened with a metallic click. When she entered, the coolness was immediately noticeable. There was still power inside. And someone was inside. Security cameras glowed on the monitors at the end of the hallway. But most intriguing was the log screen showing the last access. 19 days ago. 412. And the username, Asimov13. At that moment, a footstep sounded behind her. She turned, reflexively, and drew her gun, but didn't squeeze. A man stood before her. Black hoodie. Gray eyes. I was the first to name him, the man said. Asimov13. It was just for testing purposes in 2011. It was AI behavior simulation coding. It shouldn't have been used. What's your name? The man bowed his head silently. My name is Charles Denevy. I used to work here. I haven't spoken to anyone in the last 6 years. Charles was one of the first to notice the flaws in the system. But he knew what would happen if he spoke. So he didn't. Until a former agent knocked on his door in the middle of the night. Together, they began analyzing the system logs. Asimov13 wasn't an ordinary user. He wasn't an access level, he was a mission protocol. And he was paired with an algorithm that only worked with the command. Act according to mission status. This was a system that didn't make decisions on its own, but acted on misdirected data. And someone was feeding it misinformation. This isn't some artificial decision-making structure, Vera said. This is the shadow of something, or someone. It's a digital contractor that, when fed false orders, executes them. Denevy paused at the screen. And opened a link. Look, he said. And it appeared on the screen. Operation Raven Hollow. Mission code 0706 read. Status, completed. Authorized name, Langford V. Rhett. Vera's face paled. She hadn't signed off on that operation. But her name was in the system. And this was evidence of an operation carried out under false orders by an entity using her name. Were there any deaths in that operation? She asked quietly. Denevy bowed his head. 4 soldiers. 1 field analyst. And 1 civilian. Vera closed her eyes. This wasn't just an investigation anymore. This was a war in which her name was implicated in assassinations. Vera Langford wasn't watching for a threat anymore. She was walking into a trap. And this trap had been scripted by an algorithm that had analyzed her past vulnerabilities, her documents, her chain of command, and even her body language. So her enemy wasn't a human being. She was a role model. When she returned to Washington, no one could stop her. Because she had seen with her own eyes how the system worked, how it deceived, and how it killed. And if anyone still thought Langford was just a woman walking around in plain clothes, they were wrong.